the sound of knees dragging across sacred marble. October 30th, 1501. You're sitting in the private apartments of the Pope. You can't move, you can't speak. Your wine cup trembles in your hand, but you don't dare set it down, because setting it down means admitting this is real. Around you, cardinals in scarlet robes stare at the floor. Some are praying, some have closed their eyes entirely. And between their legs, crawling like animals across the sacred ground of the Vatican, 50 naked women collect chestnuts, while the Vicar of Christ watches from his throne. He's laughing, but here's what freezes your blood. This is just the entertainment. The bride doesn't know yet what her father has planned for her before sunrise. Something so calculated, so surgically cruel that it won't kill her body. It will destroy everything else. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover has been buried for 500 years. And by the end, you'll understand why. This is the story of Lucrezia Borgia, and the night that should have damned the Vatican forever. If this story grips you, drop a like. It takes a second and helps us pull more voices out of the darkness. 3 weeks earlier, December 1501, a man rides through the gates of Rome like a condemned prisoner walking to the scaffold. Alfonso d'Este, heir to the Duchy of Ferrara, 25 years old, from a family that has ruled northern Italy for generations, and he's terrified. You're riding into the most powerful city on earth to marry a woman whose last 2 husbands are dead. The first was declared impotent, publicly humiliated, discarded when he was no longer useful. The second was stabbed on the Vatican steps. When he survived, her brother sent men to strangle him in his bed, while Lucrezia screamed and pounded on the door. That was 18 months ago. Now it's your turn. Alfonso tried everything to escape. Excuses, delays. His father begged the Pope to choose someone else. The response from Rome was simple: accept the alliance or watch Cesare's armies reduce Ferrara to ash. So here he is. The reception is designed to break him. Pope Alexander VI receives him in the throne room. 69 years old, corpulent, radiating power, like heat from a furnace. His eyes scan Alfonso the way a butcher examines livestock. To his right stands Cesare Borgia, 26, cardinal turned general, the man who strangled Alfonso's predecessor. He doesn't speak during the entire reception. He just watches, a faint smile at his lips, like a cat that's already decided when to strike. For 3 weeks, Alfonso endures humiliations disguised as celebrations, banquets where he's seated next to courtesans while cardinals smirk, hunting parties where Cesare demonstrates his marksmanship, receptions where the Pope jokes about his dead predecessors. Every night, Alfonso writes letters to his father that he knows are being read, and wonders which day will be his last. Then comes the wedding, the papal chapel. Golden walls reflecting, candlelight, frescoes of saints and angels looking down on the assembly, the smell of incense so thick it coats your throat. Pope Alexander VI officiates personally. His voice echoes through the chamber as he speaks the sacred words that will bind his daughter to her third husband. Alfonso stands at the altar. His hands won't stop shaking. He can feel Cesare's eyes on the back of his neck throughout the entire ceremony. Cold, patient, the gaze of a predator watching prey that doesn't realize it's already caught. And beside him stands Lucrezia, 21 years old, golden hair arranged in elaborate braids, threaded with pearls, a gown of silk and gold worth more than most Italian villages. She's beautiful in a way that almost hurts to look at. But her eyes are what stop you. They're empty. Not sad, not angry, not frightened. Just vacant, like someone who left their body years ago and never fully returned. The night before, while her handmaidens prepared her trousseau, Lucrezia had stood at her window, looking out at Rome, the city where she was born, the city where she watched her second husband bleed on the steps, the city that had taken everything from her and kept demanding more. One of her ladies, a young girl from Naples, had asked if she was excited for the wedding. Lucrezia had smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind of smile you learn when showing real emotion, is dangerous. Excited, she repeated, like she was testing a word from a foreign language. Yes, of course. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in the chapel of Santa Maria in Portico until dawn, kneeling on cold stone, praying to a God who had never answered. Not when they annulled her first marriage and called her used goods. Not when they murdered Alfonso in the room next to hers. Not once in 21 years. But she prayed anyway, because prayer was the only thing left that belonged to her. Now she stands at the altar, speaking vows she doesn't believe, to a man she doesn't know, in a ceremony controlled by a father who has never seen her as anything but currency. This is a woman who has learned that showing emotion in her family is dangerous, that tears can be weaponized, that love can be twisted into a knife and buried in your chest. She speaks her vows in a voice so flat it barely registers as human. Alfonso responds in kind. Two people performing a ritual neither believes in, surrounded by men who have already decided their fate. The rings are exchanged, the Pope pronounces them married, and then Alexander smiles, that wide, predatory smile, and announces that now the true celebration can begin. The guests are led to the Borgia apartments for the wedding feast. The doors close behind them. Guards take position at every exit, and Lucrezia feels something she hasn't felt in years. Not fear, she's beyond fear, something colder. The certainty that her father is about to teach her a new lesson. And whatever it is, she will survive it the way she's survived everything else, by going somewhere inside herself where they can't reach, by becoming empty before they can empty her. The feast begins like any aristocratic wedding. Roasted peacock with gold leaf, mountains of exotic fruits, wine that costs more per bottle than a peasant earns in a year. Musicians play. Poets recite verses praising the bride and groom. Laughter echoes off the painted walls. Hours pass. The wine flows. Conversation grows louder, looser. Some guests begin to relax. Alfonso almost lets himself believe this is just a wedding. Then he notices the guards have multiplied. Then he notices Cesare hasn't touched his wine all night. Then he notices the Pope is staring at him. Not warmly, expectantly, like a man waiting for a performance to begin. Midnight approaches. Cesare stands. The room falls silent instantly, as if someone has cut the strings of every voice at once. He walks to the side doors and gives a quiet order. The doors open. 50 women enter the hall. They're dressed in magnificent gowns, velvet and silk, adorned with jewels that catch the candlelight. These aren't common prostitutes. These are Rome's elite courtesans, women who normally serve cardinals, ambassadors, the highest levels of power. But their eyes are wrong, wide with fear, darting toward the exits that are blocked by armed guards. Pope Alexander rises from his throne, wine cup raised, smile widening. Now, he announces, the true entertainment begins. At his command, the women begin to undress. One by one, gowns fall to the marble floor. Silk puddles around bare feet. 50 women stand completely naked before the assembled princes of the church. Some cardinals look away. Others clutch rosaries, lips moving in prayers that feel obscene in this context. A few younger clergy lean forward, drunk enough to forget themselves. Alfonso stares at his plate. His knuckles are white around his knife, but Alexander isn't finished. Servants enter carrying baskets of chestnuts. They scatter them across the floor, hundreds rolling between the feet of horrified guests, disappearing under tables, spreading across the sacred marble. Then the Pope announces the rules. The women must crawl on all fours and collect the chestnuts. Whoever gathers the most wins prizes from the papal treasury. Silk robes, golden necklaces, jewels. Picture this: 50 naked women on their hands and knees, crawling between the legs of cardinals and bishops, beneath frescoes of the Virgin Mary, across floors where popes have walked for centuries. The sound. Knees scraping stone. The clink of chestnuts gathered in trembling hands, stifled sobs, and above it all, laughter. The Pope laughing, Cesare laughing, the sound bouncing off golden walls like something from hell's own banquet. Some guests join in, throwing chestnuts farther, making the women crawl longer distances. Others sit frozen, minds unable to process what they're witnessing. An elderly cardinal stands and tries to leave. Guards block his path. He sits back down and doesn't lift his head again for the rest of the night. And Lucrezia sits motionless beside Alfonso. Her face betrays nothing. She's learned to go somewhere else inside herself when her family performs. It's the only way to survive. The banquet continues for hours. When it finally ends, the courtesans huddle in corners, clutching their humiliating prizes, unable to look at anyone. Alfonso thinks it's over. He's wrong, because now the Pope rises again, and the words he speaks next will echo through history for 500 years. The sacred duty of marriage, Alexander announces, must now be fulfilled. In any normal wedding, consummation happens privately. Perhaps witnesses verify the sheets the next morning. Uncomfortable, but standard for noble families. What Alexander orders is something else entirely. Alfonso and Lucrezia will consummate their marriage tonight, not once, 3 times, and every person in this room will serve as witness. The hall goes silent. Not quiet, silent. The complete absence of sound that happens when an entire room stops breathing at once. Even Cesare shows a flicker of surprise. Even he didn't expect his father to go this far. Alfonso stands. His face has gone the colour of old bone. He's a prince. He's spent his entire life training in. He's just been ordered to perform the most intimate act of his life as public theatre. He looks at the guards, at Cesare, whose hand rests casually on his sword, at the Pope, whose smile hasn't wavered. There is no escape. They're led to an adjoining chamber, a room normally used for receiving ambassadors, now furnished with a bed draped in silk. The doors remain open. Guests are positioned in the outer hall, with direct sightlines. What happens over the next several hours strips away every layer of human dignity until nothing remains but flesh and shame. Alfonso, psychologically shattered, surrounded by armed men and watching eyes, consummates the marriage. His movements are mechanical. His mind has retreated somewhere far away. Lucrezia lies beneath him, eyes fixed on the ceiling, silent, still. She survived 2 husbands. She knows how to separate her soul from her body, how to become an empty vessel until the storm passes. But here's what breaks you. Afterward, Cesare personally enters the chamber. He inspects the evidence with clinical detachment. Then he announces, loudly enough for everyone to hear, that the first consummation has occurred, and he orders them to wait 1 hour and repeat it. 1 hour, imagine that hour. Alfonso sitting on the edge of the bed, unable to look at his wife. Lucrezia lying motionless, staring at nothing. The murmur of voices in the outer hall, servants refreshing wine for guests who can't leave, and the knowledge that in 60 minutes it begins again. The second consummation happens around 2 a.m. Both of them are operating in states of complete dissociation now. Bodies moving without minds attached. Humanity switched off because the alternative is madness. In the outer room, cardinals murmur prayers that taste like ash. Courtesans, who were humiliated hours earlier, weep silently for Lucrezia. Even the guards shift uncomfortably, but no one intervenes, no one speaks, no one does anything, because the Pope commands it, and the Pope speaks for God. Then comes dawn. First grey light touching the windows of the Borgia apartments, and Alexander orders the third and final act. When it's complete, Cesare announces triumphantly that the marriage is now sealed 3 times over, absolutely irrevocable under church and secular law. No annulment possible, no escape clause, no way out. The Pope raises his wine cup for a final toast. Alfonso sits at the edge of the bed, head in his hands, his entire body trembling. He'll return to Ferrara a broken man. He'll never speak of this night. Not to his family, not to his children, not to anyone. Ever. And Lucrezia lies still in her wedding gown, eyes open, seeing nothing. Her soul has retreated so far inside that it may never fully return. They wanted to destroy her while she kept breathing. They succeeded. Here's where we need to stop and ask a question that most histories ignore. How? How does a family become capable of this? Because nobody wakes up one morning and decides to destroy their own daughter in front of 50 witnesses. That kind of cruelty is built, layer by layer, year by year, until the monster in the mirror is all they've ever known. Fort Line 31, Spain, a boy named Rodrigo is born into the Borgia family. Minor nobility, respectable, but nothing special. Then his uncle becomes Pope. Overnight, everything changes. The Borgias aren't Spanish nobodies anymore. They're the family of the most powerful man in Christendom. Rodrigo is brought to Rome at 16, and what he finds there reshapes his soul. The Italian nobility despises them. They call the Borgias foreigners, Spanish dogs. At banquets, Rodrigo watches cardinals whisper behind their hands. He sees the smirks, the contempt, the certainty that his family doesn't belong. Something hardens inside him. He learns that in Rome, virtue is performance. The men who preach humility own palaces. The cardinals who condemn lust keep mistresses. The system runs on one fuel, power. Everything else is decoration. So Rodrigo stops trying to belong. He starts trying to dominate. He bribes his way to cardinal at 25. Fathers children openly. Builds a network of spies and assassins across Italy. In 1492, he bribes his way to the papacy itself. By then, he had internalized Rome's lesson completely. People are tools. Love is leverage. Family isn't sanctuary, it's arsenal. Cesare was his blade. Trained from childhood in violence and showing no mercy. Cardinal at 18. Not from faith, but utility. When military power became more valuable, he abandoned his robes without thought. Conquered cities, murdered rivals in their beds, poisoned dinner guests. Machiavelli watched Cesare and thought, this is what a perfect prince looks like. But Lucrezia was the renewable resource. From the moment she could understand language, Lucrezia learned her value wasn't who she was. It was who she could be married to. Her beauty wasn't a gift, it was an asset to catalogue. First marriage at 13. Giovanni Sforza. By 1497, the alliance was useless. The Borgias needed an annulment. The grounds? Giovanni declared impotent, publicly, humiliatingly. A lie so obvious all Italy laughed, but no one contradicted. Lucrezia learned, your body belongs to the family. Your reputation belongs to the family. Even truth belongs to the family. Second marriage, at 17, Alfonso of Aragon. And here's the cruel part, she actually loved him. Witnesses described how her face lit up when he entered, how they walked in the Vatican gardens, laughing like children who'd found something real. Then Cesare decided Alfonso was no longer useful. The first assassination attempt failed. Alfonso survived the stabbing. Lucrezia nursed him herself, cooking his meals because she trusted no one else. For 1 month, she fought for him, believed she could save him. Then Cesare's men came, threw her out of the room, strangled her husband while she screamed and pounded on the door. She was 19. That's when Lucrezia stopped being a person and became a ghost wearing a person's face. By her third wedding, she had learned the family's final lesson. Hope is the cruelest weapon. It makes you believe things can be different. And when they take it, the wound is deeper than if you'd never hoped at all. The ceremony in the Borgia apartments wasn't her breaking point. It was just the most public performance of a destruction that had been happening her entire life. Within days, news of the wedding spreads across Europe like plague. Ambassadors send encrypted dispatches to Venice, Florence, Milan, Paris. The reports are read with horrified disbelief. The Venetian ambassador writes, What has occurred in the Vatican surpasses anything from the darkest days of the Roman Empire. But here's what happened to the people in that room. Pope Alexander VI died 2 years later, possibly poisoned. An ironic end for a man who poisoned so many others. Cesare Borgia lost everything the moment his father's heart stopped. He died in 1507, ambushed in Spain, his body torn apart and buried in an unmarked grave. The machine they built consumed them both. And Lucrezia? Lucrezia lived another 18 years. The journey to Ferrara took a month. Witnesses described her as silent, staring out the window at landscapes she didn't seem to see. She didn't speak for the first 3 days. She moved in with Alfonso, who could barely look at her. Their marriage existed in permanent winter. They shared meals in silence. They produced heirs out of duty. The weight of that unspoken night hung between them like a wall neither could climb. But Lucrezia refused to disappear. She threw herself into charity, walked among the common people, patronized artists and poets. She became, against all expectations, beloved by Ferrara. They called her La Buona Duchessa, the Good Duchess. She had 8 children. She ran her husband's court. She earned respect through actions, not birthright. But her ladies reported she woke screaming from nightmares, that sometimes her eyes would go distant mid-conversation, that she spent hours kneeling on cold chapel stone, praying to a God who had never answered. She never returned to Rome, not once in 18 years. She died in 1519, giving birth to her last child. 39 years old, her final words, "I am ready to finally be free." Free! So why does this story matter 500 years later? Because it's not about the Borgias, it's about the architecture of destruction. The way systems built to protect become instruments of annihilation. The way power, when it answers to nothing, turns on the people closest to it. The night of October 30th, 1501 wasn't an aberration. It was the logical conclusion of absolute authority. When the Pope himself orchestrates something like this, surrounded by cardinals who do nothing, it proves something terrifying. The corruption wasn't a flaw. The corruption was the system. The Vatican tried to bury this story. Records destroyed. Burchard's diary hidden for centuries. But here's what they didn't understand. You can burn documents, silence witnesses, rewrite histories, but you cannot erase what people carry inside them. And you cannot kill what gets carved into stone. Johann Burchard wrote his account knowing it might cost him everything. He wrote anyway, because some truths are too heavy to carry alone, because silence makes you complicit, because the dead deserve witnesses. 500 years later, we found his words. Lucrezia Borgia was meant to disappear. A footnote, a transaction. Instead, she outlived them all. Her father died by poison, possibly his own. Her brother was torn apart in Spain. The machine consumed them both. But Lucrezia built a life from wreckage, raised children who never knew that night, became La Buona Duchessa, died not as a Borgia, but as something she made herself. They wanted to destroy her, while she kept breathing. She kept breathing anyway, and that's the lesson that echoes across centuries. Power can take everything. Your body, your dignity, your hope. It can turn your family into executioners, and your wedding night into a grave. But it cannot take the part of you that chooses to survive. It cannot touch the place where you decide who you are. It cannot reach the voice that says, even in the darkest room, I am still here. That's what Lucrezia held on to, through every horror, for 18 years until her final breath. I am still here, and 500 years later, so is her story. If this reached you, subscribe. We dig into the chapters history tried to erase, because the past isn't dead. It's waiting in the dark, waiting for someone to remember.